The alarms echoed through the quiet night sky, but no one on Earth understood what they meant. They were not human alarms. They came from a small listening station on the moon, where 3 tired technicians watched screens filled with strange shapes. The youngest of them, Mira Tan, leaned forward with wide eyes. Something was moving fast, too fast to be natural, and it was coming straight toward Earth. She checked the sensors again. The object was not a rock. It was not a satellite. It was not anything humans had launched. It was a fleet. "Call control," she whispered. "Now." The others hesitated for only a moment. Then they moved. Hands shook, voices cracked, and the message went out. Across space, silent and cold, hundreds of dark, sharp-edged ships slid toward Earth like knives. No lights. No signals. No warnings. Just purpose. In the flagship's command room, the Zor Imperator Vakran stood tall, his armor made from the bones of defeated species. His 4 eyes stared at the image of Earth with the calm confidence of a conqueror. "Begin descent," he ordered. The Zor Empire had crushed 27 worlds. They wanted Earth because it was rich in resources, easy to reach, and poorly defended. Their spies had reported that humans were loud, emotional, and disorganized. Perfect targets. Vakran expected it to be the easiest victory in their long history. He was wrong. Back on Earth, Mira watched the screens freeze for a moment and then flare bright red. The enemy ships had broken past the outer markers. They were entering the moon's shadow. Her heart hammered as she sent out the emergency broadcast again and again. People on Earth still slept peacefully, unaware that the biggest threat in human history had just arrived. But one man did not sleep. General Rafe Calder was already awake in his office, reviewing satellite data. When the alert message flashed on his screen, he stood up without a word. His face stayed calm, but inside, a cold fire lit. He read Myra's message twice, then called the president directly. "Sir, this is not a drill," he said. "We are under attack." The president asked questions, but Rafe had no answers, only warnings. The enemy ships were too many. Humanity had never seen technology like this before. They had minutes, maybe an hour at most, before the first attack. Rafe hung up and rushed toward the underground command center. Soldiers ran beside him. People shouted. Doors clanged open. The building woke like a machine preparing for war. He knew Earth was not ready. But he also knew humans were strange creatures. When pushed into a corner, they fought harder than anyone expected. The enemy ships crossed the orbit line and formed a perfect attack pattern. Vakran smiled. He believed he already owned Earth. He opened the first communication channel. Not to speak with humans, he did not care what they thought, but to speak to his fleet. "Warriors of the Zor Empire," he said. "Today, we take another world." The fleet roared back in perfect unity, their voices cold and full of pride. Vakran raised his clawed hand. "Fire the opening strike." But nothing happened. The weapons stayed dark. Vakran frowned. Again. Still nothing. A tech officer trembled. "Imperator. Something is interfering with the power cycle." Vakran stared at him as if he were an insect. "Impossible." But then another officer shouted, "Sir. The human planet is sending out a high-frequency burst, unknown type, affecting our systems." Vakran's 4 eyes widened. Humans? Disrupting their systems? The idea felt insulting. "Adapt," he snapped. But the humans were already moving. Back on Earth, Rafe watched the data burst go out. It was a desperate, untested defense tool, something experimental that scientists had begged for more time to complete. But time was now a luxury. Mira and the Moon team had sent the signal at the same second the lab on Earth activated its ground emitters. The combined pulse struck the Zor fleet with unexpected strength. For the first time in the history of their empire, a target had hit them first. Vakran's ship shook. Screens flickered. He grabbed onto the command rail. "Regain control," he ordered. But his officers were panicking. Their perfect formation was breaking. Some ships drifted, others fell out of alignment, and one small cruiser even spiraled away, out of command range. Vakran's anger burned. "Recover power and strike. Now." Earth's defense systems powered up. Fighter jets launched. Orbital guns activated. The world woke to the sight of alien ships crossing the sky like falling shadows. People screamed. News channels overflowed. Every country scrambled. No one knew what was coming next. Rafe stood before the main screen in the underground base, jaw tight, eyes sharp. "Prepare counterattack," he said. "We don't let them land." But the Zor fleet recovered faster than expected. Vakrin forced his ships back into shape, ignoring the ones still malfunctioning. His voice cut like steel. "Full assault. Destroy their defenses. Break their will." The sky lit with the first shots of the war. Earth shook as alien fire slammed into its upper shield layers. Explosions flared in the atmosphere like burning stars. Humans fired back, missiles streaking upward. The first human casualties appeared. The first Zor ships fell burning toward the ocean. Everyone on Earth felt the same cold truth. This was not a visit. This was not a warning. This was war. Mira watched the battle from the moon station, fear and determination mixing inside her. She sent one last message to Earth. "We won't survive unless we fight together." Below her, humanity rose as one for the first time in history. The Zor Empire thought Earth would kneel. But humans were already proving them wrong, and the war had only just begun. The first hour of the war changed everything. Earth's skies were filled with fire. Burning trails crossed the atmosphere as human missiles and alien plasma bolts tore through the darkness. People everywhere watched in fear, but also in shock. Human weapons were actually hitting some of the Zor ships. Not many, but enough to show something important. The invaders were not invincible. General Rafe Calder rushed through the underground command hallway, surrounded by officers reading reports as fast as they appeared. The entire base shook every few minutes. Dust fell from the ceiling. Screens flickered with warnings. "Status on the Eastern Shield?" Rafe asked. "Barely holding," an officer replied. "We can't take many more direct hits." Rafe nodded grimly and stepped into the main command room. A giant map of Earth glowed across the central screen. Red dots, the alien ships, moved like a deadly swarm. Blue dots, the human defense groups, flickered weakly, but they were still there. He spoke loud enough for the whole room to hear. "Listen up. We didn't start this fight. But we are not losing it. Now move, get every unit in the air, land, and sea. Full coordination." His voice cut through fear like a knife. Officers straightened. Soldiers moved with new energy. Even the shaking walls felt steadier. Above Earth, Vakrin watched the chaos with growing irritation. The humans were supposed to break quickly. They were supposed to panic, hide, and surrender. Instead, they fought with stubborn strength. They shot down 4 Zor cruisers, damaged 7 more, and even disrupted the main power network twice. No other species had ever done that in the opening round. Vakrin's voice dropped into a cold growl. "Deploy ground teams. Burn their cities. Crush their spirit." His fleet obeyed. 3 massive troop transports broke from the formation and dove toward Earth. Their sides opened, releasing hundreds of armored pods that rained down like metal meteors. They would land in major cities, New York, Delhi, Tokyo. But something unexpected happened before they reached the ground. Mira Tan, still in the moon listening station, was frantically searching through communication channels when she noticed something no one had seen yet. The Zor drop pods had a pattern, an organization she could measure. She typed fast, calculating angles and flight paths. If Earth fired at the right moment. She grabbed her communicator. "Moon station to Earth defense. You can intercept the pods if you adjust launch timing by 0.03 seconds. Trust me." Rafe heard the message through the speaker and stared up at the screen. "Who is this?" "Mira Tan, lunar technician," she answered, voice shaking but firm. "I've mapped their landing vectors. You need to fire now." Someone in the room murmured, "Are we seriously going to trust a moon tech?" Rafe didn't hesitate. "Do it." The missile crews received the new command and adjusted their targeting. Then they fired. The timing was perfect. The missiles hit the pods mid-descent, not destroying most of them completely, but breaking the formation. Instead of landing in tight, organized groups, many pods spun out of control. Some crashed into empty fields. Others splashed into the sea. A few still reached the cities, but they arrived scattered, like seeds blown by the wind instead of soldiers marching in order. Vakrin's eyes widened with shock. How had the humans adapted so fast? He slammed a clawed hand against the armrest. Find the source of their interference. Find what they are using. But Earth had no single source. Humans were unpredictable. They did not rely on one system or one commander. They made decisions fast, adapted, improvised, and acted with emotion, something the Zor Empire had long considered a weakness. Now it was turning into humanity's greatest weapon. On the ground, people in New York ran through smoke-filled streets, but when the alien pods crashed and broke open, humans didn't simply flee. Police officers fired pistols. Civilians threw anything they could find. A construction worker swung a metal pipe so hard it cracked a Zor helmet. The alien soldier fell, stunned. More humans swarmed. The Zor were strong, but they expected fear, not resistance. In Delhi, a street market erupted into chaos as a pod smashed into a food stall. But instead of running, a group of volunteers dragged children to safety while others used old military rifles and homemade explosives. The Zor troops found themselves fighting through narrow alleys filled with smoke and sound. They could not advance. In Tokyo, a retired engineer hacked a traffic control system to trap an alien unit inside a tunnel. Trapped in darkness, the Zor soldiers were forced into close combat, something they hated. Everywhere the pods landed, humans fought like cornered animals. Angry. Desperate. United. And it scared the Zor. Back in the underground command center, Rafe received the reports. His face remained steady, but hope flickered in his eyes. "Get me a channel to the moon," he said. Myra's tired face appeared on the screen. Her hair was a mess. Her hands were shaking slightly. "Ms. Tan," Rafe said. "Your guidance today saved thousands of lives." Mira blinked, surprised. I was only trying to help. And I'm not even military." "All the better," Rafe replied. "We need more brains like yours." Before Mira could respond, the moon station shook violently. Sparks flew behind her. She grabbed the console. "General, a detachment of Warships is heading toward the moon. They must have tracked our signal." Rafe's heart dropped. If the moon station fell, Earth would lose its early warning system. "Mira, evacuate now," he said. She shook her head. "There's nowhere to run. We're holding position and boosting the signal so you can see their full formation." Mira. But she had already cut the line. Outside the window behind her, the shadows of alien ships grew larger. The war was entering its next phase. And Earth was not the only target anymore. The moon station shook again as the Zor ships closed in. Mira Tan held onto the edge of her console while alarms screamed around her. Dust drifted from the ceiling. The other two technicians struggled to keep the systems alive, but they all knew the truth. Their station had no weapons. No shields. No escape vehicles. The Zor were coming to silence them. Mira looked at the screens one more time. The enemy ships formed a tight attack triangle, something she had never seen before. They were preparing to fire. "We need to send the data," she said, voice shaking. "But the transmission array is unstable." One of the technicians shouted. "If we push it any harder, it will burn out in seconds." Mira took a breath. "Then we only need a few seconds." She typed fast, sending every piece of information she could gather: ship types, energy lines, power cycles, movement patterns. If Earth got this data, they might find a weakness. The station lights flickered, then turned blood red. A technician whispered, "Impact in 30 seconds." Outside the window, the Zor fighters moved like silent beasts ready to strike. Mira hit send. Back on Earth, in the underground command center, General Rafe Calder watched the moon feed come through in chaotic bursts. Lines of code. Ship diagrams. Fragmented sensor readings. Enough to help, if they survived long enough to decode it. An officer gasped. "Sir, the moon station is losing power." Rafe stared at the screen showing Myra's last transmission. She had stayed behind to give Earth a chance. He clenched his fists. "Get every orbital cannon to target that Zor attack wing. Fire now." The cannons fired, but they were too far from the moon. The shots came close but missed. The Zor fighters kept closing in on Myra's station. Rafe slammed his fist on the console. "Come on. Come on." But the moon was too far away for Earth to save. Up in the station, Mira felt the metal floor vibrate harder. The first Zor shots hit the outer shell. The walls groaned. Small fires burst along the wiring. The countdown reached 10 seconds. 9. 8. The senior technician looked at Mira. His face was pale. "It was good working with you." Mira smiled sadly. "You too." 7. 6. The Zor fighters circled closer like wolves around a dying creature. 5. 4. Then something strange happened. The Zor ships suddenly stopped moving. They froze in space, engines dimming, lights fading like dying stars. The technicians stared in disbelief. What? What is that? Mira whispered. A deep vibration rippled through the moon dust. Not from weapons. Not from engines. From something else. Something beneath them. A massive burst of energy shot upward from the moon's far side, bright enough to light half the station. The Zor fighters shuddered and spun wildly as if caught in a storm. They were not being attacked. They were being pushed away. Mira shielded her eyes from the glare. What's happening? The moon had no weapons, at least none the public knew about. But Earth had many secrets. On the far side of the moon, hidden inside a massive crater, a secret human facility activated for the first time. A defensive pulse generator, something experimental and considered too dangerous to use near human settlements, was now firing again and again. The Zor attack wing had flown directly into its range. The fighters cracked, their armor warping under the pressure. One bent in half like metal foil and exploded silently. Mira stared through the window. She could not see the generator, but she saw the result. The Zor were retreating, engines burning to escape its reach. The station trembled, but not from enemy fire, this time from the shock wave of alien ships dying in space. The pulse hit again. Another Zor ship burst apart. Then another. The remaining fighters fled so fast their wakes left glowing trails behind them. The attack on the moon was over. But the pulse generator shut down immediately, its power exhausted. The moon station went silent except for small fires and broken machinery. Mira collapsed into a chair, shaking. She had survived. Not because of luck, but because someone on Earth had made a weapon they hoped never to use. She whispered, "Thank you." Back on Earth, Rafe watched the alien ships scatter away from the moon on his screen. Officers in the command center cheered, some crying, some laughing in relief. But Rafe didn't smile. He saw something in the data Mira sent before the attack. Something dangerous. One of the diagrams showed a Zor ship core, a glowing sphere inside the ship's belly, overloaded by a simple frequency burst. The ships had a flaw. A weakness. Rafe leaned forward, whispering, "You're not as perfect as you think, Vakran." Meanwhile, aboard the Zor flagship, Vakran rose from his command throne with a slow, deadly calm. His officers backed away in fear as he studied the latest report. A single human energy pulse, primitive and unstable, had forced his fighters to withdraw. Worse, several ships had been destroyed. By humans. Vakran's voice was quiet, but it shook the room. How did they activate such a weapon without our scouts detecting it? No one answered. Vakran's claws tightened around a metal railing. It bent under his grip. "The humans are improvising," one officer finally said. "They fight with chaos. They use everything, even broken systems." Vakran hated that answer. Chaos was weakness. Disorganization. It was the opposite of the Zor Empire. And yet, it was working. Vakran turned his gaze toward Earth. "Then we will not destroy them quickly," he said. "We will break them slowly." His eyes narrowed. "Prepare the obliterator ships." Every Zor officer froze. Those ships were not for war. They were for extinction. The Zor flagship grew quiet as Vakran's order echoed through the command chamber. Every officer understood what the obliterator ships meant. They were not made for capturing worlds or forcing surrender. They were made for wiping entire species from existence. They were the Zor Empire's last resort. Vakran had never needed them before. Now, for the first time, a primitive world had wounded his pride. "We deploy them within the hour," he said. "Earth will learn what happens when they resist the Empire." Far below, Earth had no idea that something far worse was coming. General Rafe Calder stood at the center of the underground command room as engineers and codebreakers worked to decode Myra's moon data. Streams of alien diagrams filled the screens. Officers whispered urgently. "General," a young analyst said, "we're seeing something unusual. The Zor power cores destabilize when hit with overlapping frequencies. If we create a synchronized burst, we might overload them." Rafe studied the model. He understood only parts of it, but the meaning was clear. "We can break their ships," he said quietly. The analyst nodded. "Yes, sir. Not destroy them outright, but damage them enough to stop movement or weapons." Rafe turned toward his communications officer. "Get the president. And the heads of every military branch. Now." But before the officer could respond, alarms blared. A radar tech shouted, "New ships detected. Huge ones." Rafe's heart tightened. He knew this couldn't be good. Put it on the main screen. The radar zoomed in. 3 enormous shapes drifted out of the darkness of space. They were almost the size of small cities, with glowing symbols carved across their hulls. No weapons were visible. But that made them even more frightening. What are those? Someone whispered. Rafe answered without turning. Something we're not ready for. On the moon, Mira Tan watched the same radar feed from her damaged station. The lights flickered around her. The air smelled like hot metal and burnt wiring. But she stayed at her console, working through pain and exhaustion. The new alien ships were moving slowly, as if they carried something heavy. Something dangerous. She called Earth again. General called her, I'm tracking those ships. They're powering something. A massive energy buildup. Rafe heard the fear in her voice. And he shared it. Any guesses what it is? He asked. Yes, Mira said. A planetary weapon. Silence filled the room. Back on the Zor flagship, Vakrin watched the Obliterator ships take position above Earth like giant predators. Begin charging the planetary erasure beam, Vakrin commanded. A deep hum filled the fleet. One of his strategists, a thin, nervous officer, spoke carefully. Imperator, if we destroy the planet completely, we lose all resources. We gain nothing. Vakrin turned slowly, his 4 eyes hard as iron. We gain fear. The other worlds must see what happens to those who resist. The officer bowed, trembling. The charge level of the Obliterator ships climbed. 10%. 12%. 15%. On Earth, panic spread quickly. News stations showed images of the huge alien ships glowing brighter by the minute. People rushed into shelters. Families gathered together. Others prayed. Humans were brave, but this fear was different. Rafe knew they couldn't attack those ships directly. Their weapons would bounce off. He needed another plan. A crazy one. He looked at the scientist team. Can we amplify Myra's moon signal into a full-scale frequency strike? The lead scientist hesitated. We maybe could. But we need a stable relay. Something close to the enemy ships. Rafe nodded solemnly. Satellites. But sir, those satellites are old. They weren't built for this. We use them anyway. Everyone in the room understood. Sacrificing the entire satellite network was a huge risk. It would blind Earth's communications for months, maybe years. But if it stopped the Obliterator ships for even a few minutes, that was enough. Start rerouting the power grid, Rafe ordered. The scientists moved fast. On the moon, Mira received the update and immediately began syncing her data. She typed as fast as her hands allowed, fighting through exhaustion. One of her surviving technicians looked at her with worry. Mira. You should rest. You're shaking. We don't have time, she said. If we fail, Earth is gone. Outside the station window, the glow from the alien ship spread across space like a sunrise. 20%. 25%. 33%. Back on the Zor flagship, Vakrin watched the energy levels with satisfaction. Soon, he whispered. Your planet will be dust. But something unusual caught his eye. A strange vibration. A new frequency. He frowned. What is that? The sensor officer checked. His face went pale. Imperator. Humans are redirecting energy across their satellite network. They are trying to interfere with us again. Vakrin snarled. Disable those satellites. We can't, the officer said weakly. The humans are powering them beyond normal levels. Too fast for us to target. Vakrin roared and slammed his fist into the console. Then fire before they complete their trick. But it was too late. Rafe shouted, activate the full signal. Now. Every old satellite around Earth burned bright like stars. The frequency wave burst outward. It hit the Obliterator ships first. The glow around the ships flickered. Then shook. Then cracked. The charging sequence stalled at 48%. The giant ships trembled as internal systems sparked. Their enormous energy cores vibrated dangerously. On the moon, Mira watched in awe. It's working. It's actually working. But then she saw something else. One Obliterator ship stabilized itself and began rerouting power. She grabbed the communicator. General. The third ship is still charging. It's adapting to the signal. Rafe's face hardened. Vakrin stood tall in his command room, furious but still determined. The humans delay their fate, he growled. But they do not escape it. And slowly, the charge meter of the last ship began rising again. 52%. 55%. 58%. The war for Earth was entering its most dangerous moment yet. The world held its breath as the third Obliterator ship powered back up. Its glow spread across the sky like a dark sunrise, and even from Earth's surface, people could see the faint halo growing brighter. General Rafe Calder stood in the underground command center, staring at the rising numbers. 61%. 63%. 65%. The scientists worked frantically on their consoles, trying to boost the satellite signal again. Sparks flew from one panel. A technician cursed. Another screen went black. "We can't push it any harder." The lead scientist shouted. "The satellite grid is burning itself out." Rafe grabbed the edge of the table. "Then we use what's left. Give me whatever power remains." "But sir." "That's an order." The scientists obeyed, but Rafe could already see the fear in their eyes. The last Obliterator ship was adapting too fast. They couldn't stop it with the same trick. They needed something else. On the moon, Mira Tan and her two surviving technicians watched the power levels spike again. They knew Earth was trying everything. Mira swallowed hard. Her hands were shaking badly now. She had hardly slept, and every bone in her body hurt. But she would not stop. "We can't beat their charge directly," she said slowly, "but maybe we can break the beam path." The technicians stared at her. "What do you mean?" Mira pointed to the diagram she had decoded earlier. "The Zor weapon fires a concentrated line toward Earth. If we disrupt the path, if we scatter the beam, it won't hit correctly." "That would take enormous force," the older technician murmured. Mira nodded. "Yes. But the moon has it." The technician's eyes widened. "You mean the Farside generator?" Mira nodded again. Earlier, the generator had activated automatically and defended them. But now it sat empty and overheated, its giant coils cracked from the first discharge. "It's damaged," the technician said. "It can't fire again." "Not unless," Mira said, "we overcharge it." The room fell silent. Everyone understood. If they overcharged the generator, it would release a huge burst of energy. And then explode. "We wouldn't survive," the technician whispered. Mira looked at the window, where Earth hung like a blue jewel in the darkness. "Then we give everything we have." Back on Earth, Rafe's team tried one last attempt to strengthen the satellite signal. But the Obliterator ship's charge kept rising. 70%. 73%. 76%. The scientists looked defeated. One quietly said, "General, we're out of time." Rafe didn't speak. He stared at the screen as if sheer will alone could stop the charge. Then the communicator beeped. "Mira Tan to Earth Defense," she said, her voice calm but tired. "General Calder, I have a plan." Rafe turned sharply. "Mira? You should be evacuating." "There's no escape," she said. "But I can stop the beam. The Farside generator can disrupt the path." Rafe's eyes widened. "That generator? It's unstable." "I know," Mira said softly, "but we can still use it." The technician behind her added, "Sir. If we fire it again, it will destroy the generator, and us." Rafe felt a sharp pain in his chest. Mira had already risked her life once. Now she was offering it again. "Mira," he said, voice low, "you don't have to do this." She shook her head. "If we don't, Earth dies. Millions of people. Children. Families. Everything. We don't get a second chance." Rafe closed his eyes for one long moment. Then he nodded. "Tell me what you need," he said. Mira took a deep breath. "We need Earth to sync the satellite signal with the generator's pulse. If both strike at the same time, the beam will collapse." The scientists got to work immediately. In the Zor flagship, Vakrin watched his weapon's power level rise. 84%. 87%. 91%. "Prepare to fire," he commanded. But an officer trembled. "Imperator, the humans are manipulating lunar energy. There's a spike coming from their moon." Vakrin bared his teeth. "Then fire before they finish." Earth trembled as the Obliterator ship's massive beam chamber opened like a giant flower. A sphere of dark light formed at its center. On the moon, Mira and the two technicians strapped themselves into their seats in the generator chamber. Wires sparked. Steam drifted from cracked pipes. The entire facility groaned under the weight of the energy they poured into it. The older technician whispered, "If this works, Earth will remember you." Mira gave a tired smile. "If this works, they'll never know our names. And that's fine." The generator lights turned bright white. Earth sent the signal. The moon synced it. The obliterator ship reached full charge. 100%. Vakran's voice thundered across his ship. "Fire!" A colossal beam shot downward toward Earth. At the same moment, the farside lunar generator released its pulse. The two energies collided in space. For a second, the beam held, then Myra's generator pulse destabilized it. The dark energy cracked. Shattered. Exploded outward. The blast wave rippled across the sky, shaking the Zor fleet. The obliterator ship's beam chamber tore apart like paper. Vakran staggered backward, stunned. No. No. The obliterator ship broke apart in a giant silent flash. On the moon, the generator room exploded. Mira and the technicians were thrown into white light. Then nothing. Back on Earth, the sky glowed with the fading explosion. People watched in silence and disbelief. General Rafe Calder stood perfectly still. He knew what Mira had done. "She saved us," he whispered. But the war was far from over. Vakran still lived. And now he wanted vengeance more than victory. The explosion of the obliterator ship lit the sky brighter than dawn. Across Earth, people stood in streets, on rooftops, and inside shelters, staring up in silent awe. The world had been seconds from destruction, but now the threat was gone. For the moment, General Rafe Calder watched the destruction from the underground base via satellite images. His chest felt tight, not from fear, but from grief. Mira Tan and her team had paid the price for Earth's survival. There were no signals from the moon's farside generator facility. No transmissions. No life signs. One of the scientists quietly said, "Sir. Without Myra's final pulse, the obliterator beam would have hit the planet." Rafe nodded. "Mark the moon station team as national heroes." But inside, he made a silent promise. "Her sacrifice will not be wasted." The command center regained motion. Officers ran from station to station. Engineers replaced burnt-out panels. Tacticians pulled up new maps. Because even though Earth had survived the weapon, the Zor fleet was still in orbit. And Vakran was still alive. Above the planet, inside the Zor flagship, the command chamber was filled with smoke and sparks. Officers ran in panic as systems failed. The destruction of the obliterator ship had sent shock waves through their entire network. Vakran stood at the center of the chaos, trembling with rage. His armor was scorched from an exploding console, and his 4 eyes burned with fury. "How?" he whispered. "How did humans, primitive, chaotic humans, stop us?" No one answered. They were too afraid. Vakran slammed his fist against a metal panel. It cracked like thin ice. "The humans must be punished," he growled. "We erase their armies. We burn their cities. We break their spirits." An officer gulped. "Imperator. Our fleet has taken heavy damage. Many ships lost shields. Some cannot fire." Vakran turned slowly, voice cold as space. "Then we change the rules. We begin orbital bombardment. No more precision. No more mercy." The officers flinched. Orbital bombardment meant random destruction, huge firestorms tearing across Earth's surface. "Carry out the order," Vakran roared. The fleet repositioned itself above Earth, ready to fire. Back on Earth, warning alarms blared. A radar tech shouted, "General. The Zor ships are lowering altitude. We detect charging sequences on multiple vessels." The room fell silent. Rafe's face hardened. "They're preparing for planetary bombardment." Another officer looked pale. "Sir, if they fire, cities will fall. Millions will die." Rafe didn't deny it. They had little time, and almost no functioning space defenses left. But he refused to surrender. "Get me every leader on every channel," he ordered. "And bring up the holographic world map." The officers moved fast. Soon, the map appeared, a huge glowing sphere of Earth with red markers showing Zor positions. Rafe stepped forward. "Listen closely," he said. "The Zor think the loss of their weapon will make us panic. They think we are broken. They think we will hide." He looked around the room. Soldiers. Technicians. Scientists. Tired, scared people who still refused to give up. But they don't understand humans. We don't fall when hit. We fight back. He pointed at the map. We still have aircraft. We still have naval guns. We still have drones. And we still have ground forces. The Zor want to wipe out our cities from orbit? Then we force them to stop looking downward and start looking at us. We hit them from every angle. We don't give them time to charge. One officer frowned. Sir, are you saying we attack the entire fleet at once? Everywhere? Rafe nodded. Exactly. They cannot defend every ship from every country attacking at the same time. Another officer whispered, this is the biggest coordinated strike in Earth's history. Rafe replied firmly, and if we don't do it, there won't be a history left. He took a breath. Send the order. Global strike, all fronts. Across the world, militaries received the command. Jet engines roared. Warships turned their guns skyward. Artillery units loaded special rounds. Drone swarms lifted into the air. Even civilian engineers helped launch emergency rockets built from old space programs. Humanity was moving as one. In the Zor flagship, alarms suddenly lit the screens. Imperator! An officer shouted. Massive energy spikes detected across the planet. Countless human forces are mobilizing. Vakran snarled. Let them come. Their weapons cannot reach us. But he was wrong. The first wave hit fast. Thousands of surface-to-space missiles launched from every continent. Not strong enough to destroy the ships, but enough to force them to dodge. The second wave came from long-range guns that fired special shells packed with magnetized shrapnel. Not deadly, but enough to disrupt shield systems. The third wave came from old orbital debris that engineers had pulled from the atmosphere and aimed using improvised tethers. Huge chunks of metal slammed into Zor cruisers. The once perfect Zor formation turned chaotic. Vakran roared, stabilize. Maintain firing patterns. But his officers shouted back. Our weapons are offline. Our shields are failing. Human attacks are overwhelming our sensors. Vakran's disbelief grew. Earth's weapons were weak, but there were too many of them. Too many attacks. Too many angles. Too much chaos. Earth was drowning the Zor fleet in noise, in pressure, in unpredictability. Vakran screamed, they are animals. Savage, mindless animals. But the truth was the opposite. Humans were strategizing. Adapting. Fighting as one world. Something no species the Zor had conquered had ever done. Earth was not kneeling. Earth was standing. And Vakran felt something he had never felt in war. Fear. The Zor fleet shook under the weight of Earth's global attack. Missiles streaked through the atmosphere like burning arrows. Railguns hammered the sky. Drone swarms flew in tight formations, striking again and again. Radar signals jammed the Zor sensors, making the once perfect alien fleet stumble. Humanity was no longer defending. Humanity was pushing back. General Rafe Calder watched the command screens fill with reports from every corner of Earth. Japan's drones had disabled a Zor destroyer's engines. Germany's railguns had cracked a cruiser's shields. Brazil's missile network had forced 2 alien ships to retreat higher into orbit. Even small islands and remote towns launched rockets built from whatever they could find. Humans were fighting as a single species. The command room shook as more attacks launched. Officers shouted orders, passed updates, and cheered when a Zor ship went dark on the map. One technician yelled, General! The fleet is breaking formation. Rafe's eyes hardened. This is our chance. Every unit, focus fire on their flagship. The room went silent. The flagship. Vakran's throne. The heart of the invasion, a massive ship armored in dark plates, glowing with cold blue light. Stronger than any other vessel. Built from metals Earth didn't even have names for. We can't destroy it, an officer said softly. It's too strong. Rafe nodded. Yes. But we can damage it. And right now, we only need them scared. He leaned forward. Send the order. Across Earth, new commands flashed into every military channel. Target, Zor flagship. Engage. The world obeyed. Warships at sea fired everything they had. Jets launched the last of their air-to-space weapons. Artillery cannons fired massive high-arc rounds that punched through the upper atmosphere. Even civilian rockets, old satellites, and experimental test vehicles were sent upward. The sky filled with humanity's answer. You came to crush us. But we will not fall. Above the planet, in the Zor flagship, panic spread for the first time in the Empire's long history. Officers shouted in fear. Consoles sparked. Panels exploded. Imperator. Shields down to 40%. Multiple ships disabled. We cannot regain control of the formation. Vakrin rose from his throne, eyes filled with hatred. Stabilize the fleet. We are the Zor Empire. We do not retreat. But even as he shouted, a hail of human missiles struck the side of the flagship. The attack barely dented the armor, but it shook the ship. It shook the officers. It shook the belief the Zor had in their own invincibility. Vakrin grabbed an officer by the throat. Why are the humans still fighting? Why are they not broken? The officer choked out, humans fight differently. They fight with emotion. Vakrin threw him aside and growled, emotion is weakness. But deep inside, for the first time in his life, Vakrin wondered if emotion was actually strength. Another explosion rocked the flagship, forcing Vakrin to grab a railing. A panicked voice cried, Imperator, more human forces are launching from every region. They're focusing on us. Vakrin roared, divert all power to forward shields. But Imperator, our engines. Do it. The ship lurched violently. Lights flickered. The Zor fleet began drifting out of position, their formation collapsing like a structure made of sand. Meanwhile, on Earth, cheers erupted as more alien ships lost power and fell burning into the sea or tumbled into the upper atmosphere. The global strike had worked. Humanity had turned the tide. But Rafe Calder wasn't celebrating. He pointed at the map. The flagship's shields are weakening, but not enough. We need one final coordinated attack. A communications officer turned. General, we have an incoming transmission. From who? The officer hesitated. Not Earth. The Moon. Rafe froze. The screen flickered. And Mira Tan's tired, soot-covered face appeared. Alive. She coughed and wiped dust off her cheek. General. Generator's gone, and the station is destroyed. But we managed to hold one backup battery. It has enough power left for a short burst. Rafe stared at her, stunned. Mira. You survived. Barely, she said with a weak smile. But I can give you one more frequency pulse. Directed at the flagship. You need to sync your strike with it. Rafe looked at his officers. They all nodded. Mira, he said softly. We're ready. Far above, Vakrin tried to regain control, shouting orders and smashing consoles. But the fear in his crew had grown too strong. Then the sensors beeped. A new frequency appeared. The same pattern that had destroyed the Obliterator ship. Vakrin's eyes widened. No. Not again. But before he could react, Mira fired the pulse. At the same moment, Earth launched its final strike. Thousands of missiles. Saturation drones. Railgun rounds. Rockets from every direction. The pulse hit first, cracking the flagship's shields like glass. The global strike hit next. One impact. Then another. Then hundreds more. The flagship trembled. Panels blew apart. Engines exploded. The entire ship bent under the pressure. Vakrin screamed, We are the Zor. We do not. The flagship burst into a massive explosion of blue-white light. Every Zor ship across the fleet froze. Then, one by one, they turned and fled into deep space. Humanity had won. Earth was scarred, battered, and exhausted, but alive. In the underground base, cheers erupted louder than the explosions outside. People hugged. Some cried. Others fell to their knees in relief. Rafe Calder simply closed his eyes. It's over, he whispered. On the moon, Mira finally collapsed beside her console, smiling tiredly as she watched the Zor retreat. They declared war on Earth, she murmured. But we ended it. And far across the galaxy, the Zor Empire trembled with a realization they could not ignore. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was a force that refused to die. And their empire would never recover from the day they chose to attack Earth. Silence settled across Earth for the first time since the war began. Not complete silence, far-off sirens still sounded in damaged cities, jets still patrolled the sky, and rescue teams still moved through ruined streets. But compared to the thunder of alien weapons, the explosions, and the screams of fear, it felt like peace. In the underground command center, General Rafe Calder stepped outside for the first time in days. The air smelled like smoke and dust, but also like rain, fresh rain that washed the ash off the streets. He looked up at the sky, expecting to see the Zor fleet lurking there. But there were no enemy ships. Only stars. The war was really over. A soldier jogged up to him, saluting. "Sir, global communications are coming back online. World leaders want to speak with you." Rafe nodded. "Tell them I'll join soon." He needed one moment alone. He exhaled slowly as he looked at the moon. Even from Earth, he knew the place where the Farside generator had exploded. He could almost feel Mira Tan's presence out there, her courage, her strength, her sacrifice. But then his communicator buzzed. A soft, tired voice came through. "General. You there?" Rafe froze. Then he smiled. "Mira. You're alive." "Don't sound so surprised," she replied weakly. "We moon techs are tough. Just don't ask me to stand up right now." Rafe laughed for the first time in days. "Emergency teams are on their way. We'll get you home." "Copy that," she said. "But, General, there's something else." Her voice changed, more serious, more alert. Rafe's smile faded. "What is it?" "Before the generator blew, we picked up a long-range signal leaving the Zor fleet," Mira said. "Not a message to their empire. A distress call." "A distress call?" Rafe repeated. "For what? To ask for help?" "No," Mira whispered. "To warn someone." Rafe felt a cold chill settle in his stomach. "Mira. What did the message say?" She swallowed. "Translation is rough. But the meaning is clear enough. It says, Earth is dangerous. Do not attack alone." Rafe went silent. He thought the war was over. He thought Earth had won a final victory. But the Zor Empire was vast. The Zor Imperator was dead, but the Empire still existed, broken, wounded, but alive. And now it feared Earth. Mira continued, "There's more. The message was sent far, beyond their Empire's borders. Much farther." Rafe narrowed his eyes. "You mean? To another species?" "Yes," she said. "Someone stronger. Someone the Zor fear." The world seemed to pause around him. The wind died. Even the rain slowed. "Do we know who received it?" Rafe asked. "No," Mira answered. But the signal bounced across dozens of relays. "Someone out there heard it." Rafe pressed a hand to his forehead. "We need to prepare, then. We need to rebuild our defenses. Expand the fleet. Strengthen satellites. Push for global unity." There was a pause. Mira said softly, "General. Humans won today. And we'll be stronger tomorrow. But we shouldn't forget something important." "What's that?" he asked. "That the Zor thought we were weak," she said. "They learned the truth too late." Rafe nodded. "Humanity fights hardest when cornered." "Exactly. And whoever received that message," Mira sighed. "They'll hear it as a warning. Or a challenge." Rafe felt his determination solidify. "Then let them come," he said. "Earth will be ready." Across Earth, people began stepping outside. Cities turned, slowly, from fear to hope. Families hugged in the streets. Rescue drones dropped supplies. Firefighters cleared choking dust from collapsed buildings. Volunteers worked without sleep. Humanity had taken its deepest wound in centuries, but it was still standing. Word spread of the victory. How Earth united. How every country fought. How a small moon team saved the planet. How humans pushed an empire into retreat. Children drew pictures of alien ships exploding. Students studied maps of the war. Scientists studied their technology. Soldiers who defended their homes were greeted as heroes. The world felt different now. Stronger. More connected. More aware of the stars above. Far across the galaxy, in the distance or capital, chaos reigned. The loss of the flagship. The death of Imperator Vakran. The obliteration of their most powerful weapon. Entire fleets destroyed or scattered. The Empire had never known defeat. The surviving Zor commanders gathered in a dark war chamber lit by flickering blue light. One spoke shakily, "Earth must be purged. We should gather our armies. Call every ship. Crush them before they grow stronger." Another pounded the table. "No. The Imperator's final report states the humans are unpredictable. If we attack again, we may lose even more." A third commander hissed, "The distress call has already gone out. The Cthar Dominion will answer. Let them test the humans." Silence followed. The Cthar Dominion. A power even the Zor feared. If they came, Earth would face something far worse than Vakran's fleet. But deep in his cold heart, even the highest Sir Commander whispered the same thought. What if the humans fight back again? What if they win again? What kind of species does that make them? Back on Earth, Rafe looked up at the sky one last time before returning underground to rebuild the defenses. He didn't know when the next threat would come. A year. A decade. Tomorrow. But one thing was certain. Humanity would not meet it alone, divided, or afraid. They were united now. They were stronger than before. And they knew what lived beyond the stars. The Zor Empire never recovered from the day it chose war with Earth. And whoever came next would learn the same lesson. Humans endure. Humans fight. Humans win.